Professor Uichol KIM from Inha University in South Korea and it's called Understanding the Software of the Mind, Co-Creativity and Cultural Transformations, with a specific focus on the secrets to happiness, success, and sustainable communities. Professor Kim is a professor at the business school in Inha University in Korea. Great. So again, thank you so much, Professor Kim, for joining us. And please go ahead.
Good afternoon. I may speak a little bit longer. That would mean that we may have a little less time. So the basic storyline that I would like to present is the basic assumption about reality. So Peter Drucker pointed out that the basic assumption about reality form the paradigm of science, mind, and culture. These assumptions determine and influence the worldview and defines a discipline. A discipline's basic assumption about reality determine what it focuses on and what it considers as facts. And despite its importance, we rarely examine, analyze, and many of these assumptions are not explicit, and they are resistant to change. And one of the major revolutionary for Western software of the mind is Socrates, where he considered individual as a basic unit of analysis, meaning indivisible. And he asked during the time when gods were controlling our lives, he said, unexamined life is not worth living. And the most important is know thyself. How do I know myself? And his students, Plato and Aristotle, aimed to discover the essence of truth, justice, and beauty, in which we are still seeking the answer. But one of the journey that has been taken is in biology. In terms of Charles Darwin, he discovered that there are many more offsprings that are born than they can possibly survive. And they vary in morphology, and if they have a specific underlying condition, they'll be naturally selected. And this natural selection will continue through the genetic information that they carry. So evolution is based on competition, natural selection, and survival of the fittest. And this is what many companies, many people believe in. But is this true? Does it apply to human beings? So there is a belief on competition, natural selection, and survival of the fittest. And one person who adopted this model is Sigmund Freud, in which he defined the three aspects of the self: the instinct, reality, and morality that occurs with identification of parents. So basically, humans' behavior can be defined in terms of sexual or violent tendency. And this is what supposedly on a man's mind all the time. And the question is he correct? And so he took case studies of abnormal hysteric patients and generalized to the normal population. And he took individual cases to generalize the populations in universal based on the biological assumption. And B.F. Skinner studied animals, pigeons and rats at University of Toronto. That's what I did to understand human beings. So understanding rats and pigeons, does it help to understand human beings? He assumed that the basic behavior is the basis of complex behavior. But the problem is, what is the reinforcements and who provides the reinforcement? And this is the Piaget's developmental model, cognitive development. But the question that I ask is, where are the parents? And what about emotion that is missing in the developmental theory? Why? Because Piaget observes his children. And as a result, as a researcher, the role of parents are non-existent. So in psychology, we categorize people in terms of optimists and pessimists in terms of how they view the cup, as it half empty or half full. There is an alternative: fill the cup and drink the water. Why talk about it? And this is what Bandura, the most prolific psychologist during the century, the self as a proactive agent. We're not determined by environment or biology, but in terms of agency. And there are three types of agency: in terms of self, in terms of proxy, in terms of collective. And he has been able to define and measure people's agency through self-efficacy. People who regard themselves as highly efficacious act, think, and feel differently from those who perceive themselves as inefficacious. They produce their own future rather than simply foretelling it. So there is a fundamental difference in terms of what we call the software of the mind. And we can measure this and through self-efficacy is a belief in one's capability to organize, execute the source of action to manage a prospective situation. So self-efficacy, the most important part is what is your intention, what is your knowledge, and what is your goal? And do you have the belief and skills to actually throw a baseball or kick a football? And it leads to an outcome. And in society, self-efficacy can be modified in terms of feedback. This is what athletes and musicians do all the time in terms of practice. And also social support is a very important part of raising a person's self-efficacy. So biology, in terms of chimpanzees, are absorbed by this despair, fear, hatred, and greed. But in human life, we have hope, confidence, empathy, sharing, and trust. And so we have to understand the biological heritage and the misconception. So let me introduce you to your ancestor. This is our ancestor 80,000 years ago. Let me introduce you to your brothers and sisters, chimpanzee and bonobo monkeys. They share 98.8% of the genes, and we have much in common in terms of biology. And this is your cousin, or then your second cousin, orangutan, and the third cousin, holobas. So there are two types of chimpanzee. The first is controlled by the dominant alpha. It's very aggressive, violent, there's a hierarchy, and the alpha male creates stress for the rest of the tribe. But the pygmy chimpanzees is female dominated, egalitarian, nonviolent, matriarchal, and sexually active. And if you ask people of the two, which species did human beings evolve from? Most people think it's the chimpanzee, but actually our closest relative is bonobo monkey. And human beings survived not because of competition, but cooperation. And chimpanzee lived in a jungle, whereas human beings, Homo sapiens, lived in the sub-Saharan savannas. And there are morphological differences in terms of opposable thumb that allow us to make tools. But more importantly is bipedalism. And the reason why we walk on 2 feet is to reduce heat stress. And it caused what you call the descent of larynx. The opiate bone descended around 2 centimeters, making us able to make 20,000 different sounds, which is essential for language and communication. But the greatest transformation is fire. Fire is the destructive force and is the most powerful force. And human beings understood the power of fire and how to extinguish it by observing rain or water destroying it. And what we did do with the fire, we began to cook food with the fire. And it allowed us to consume 5 times more calorie compared to the raw meat, destroys the bacteria. And because of the additional calorie, human beings have a brain that is 4 times larger than the chimpanzee. And if you look at the human brain, it is the frontal lobe that has become enlarged. So it's not because of evolution that we have a bigger brain, because we were able to overcome our instinct that we have a bigger brain that is fear of fire. And there was a volcanic eruption 75,000 years ago in Toba, Indonesia, and it covered the earth. And this is when the ice age began to develop. And Steve Well, a geneticist working with National Geographic, took cotton swabs to assess their genetic heritage. And what did he discover? We evolved from a single tribe in Kalahari, Africa, L1. And through genetic mutations, he could cover the map of the world. So by definition, we're all African. And this is our ancestor around 80,000 years ago. So the concept of race is a social construct to justify slavery. It does not have the biological implications that many people believe. And the main difference is creativity explosion around 30 to 40,000 years ago. So we used to live in caves to be protected, but we developed ideas during the time we had some time. And what we decided to do is project our image in paintings. And this is the first information technology. And we can combine the qualities of a human being in terms of a lion man, which is not possible. So the first information technology is art. Art is the basis of our expression. And we developed hieroglyphs. Then the cuneiforms were developed, which is the basis of Western alphabet that can record abstract ideas. Chinese invented the paper, Gutenberg invented the printing press, and then we can record ideas in the Bible and Quran, so subsequent generation can read and understand and be spiritually connected. So there were simple fabrics that are developed during the Industrial Revolution. Jacquard wanted to maintain beautiful silk prints. So what did he do? He took and developed the Jacquard loom. And if you look at very carefully, different perforated paper on the right will determine which color thread enters. And this is the basis of what we call automation and the basis of the first industrial revolution. And you can recognize, if you have any background in computer, that we used to have punch cards. And this is how computers were made. So computers are an image of human brains, but converted it into digital information. Now we can store information through cloud computing, through mobility. So is there a difference between chimpanzees and human beings? One fundamental difference is chimpanzee can only make 15 screeching sounds, so it cannot communicate. So a bonobo monkey was taught to communicate using symbols. I want water, give me banana. And he can learn and communicate. But there's a problem. He could not teach his children, offspring, these basic symbols. The chimpanzee is not able to project what they know in real outside world. So when Kanzi dies, everything he has learned will disappear. And this is a fundamental difference why chimpanzees have not evolved very much in the last million years. Genetic mutation is a very slow process where information stored outside the body is explosive in terms of content and growth. So the human body is a closed system defined by our skin, but the human mind is an open system. Our brain consists of up to 1 billion neurons with 100 trillion connections. Not all the connections are made, but when we interact with other people, new ideas are integrated into our brain. So there is a misconception about genetics and neurobiology. We have around 20 to 25,000 genes, which is not much. But one of the phenomena is called epigenetics. One gene can affect several traits. One trait can be affected by several genes. A particular gene does not define a specific expression. Two identical genes can work differently. They can be turned on and off in different amounts, different places, and different times. So we are born with genes, but we have to turn it on. And through turning it on, through experience, these are expressed. And there are many different aspects of our diet, exercise, drug abuse to therapeutic drugs that influences our gene and epigenetics. A leading neurobiologist, Gerhard Huther at Göttingen, said, human brain is a social construction. It's a radical idea. Even though the brain is a biological entity, the way it is connected is through social experience. And human beings can unfold their potential in a supportive community where individuals engage with one another that inspires them to contribute to the group. Traditional neuropsychology believed in different parts of the brain responsible for different behavior. And this is not the case. So the traditional view of existing brain cell, the current is how they are connected. So riding a bicycle, driving, talking requires repetition, and the strength of connection creates a neural circuit where you can learn drive without thinking, or biking, art. And this requires repetitions and connecting the brain cell. The notion of objectivity is not real because whenever there's information that goes through our spinal cord, through five senses, are connected to our limbic system, where emotions and feelings are connected. And the same stimulus activate the same emotional cognitive network. So we are born with the body, with the potential through experience. And we develop our mindset through our experience in the world. But the most important, that experience is mediated by relationship, our parents. Because we are born premature, about 18 months, because of bipedalism, we have to completely depend on our parents for survival. And so what the brain is geared for is it rewards for accomplishing, meeting new challenges. So curiosity creates joys and happiness. And once you meet the challenge, you develop self-confidence through self-coping, and it provides a positive expectation. So Vera Husserl said, each person has a certain developmental potential. And this is realized through the support and co-creation of others. And it is a relationship in which everyone is treated as a subject rather than an object. In psychology, we treat people as objects for investigation. And it is important to explore the hidden potentials and unfold their potentials and emergence of new abilities. So AI is based on data, storage, algorithm, and processing. Human mind, especially the medial prefrontal lobe, this is where attachment, intuition, empathy, morality, and connectedness takes place. But you have to stimulate it through experience, through caring and sharing. The opposite is for loneliness. So we can engage or disengage, or be confused, or have a sense of coherence. So meditation was considered a waste of time because we did not know what happens in the brain. Currently, research in mindfulness, it reduces stress. It improves your physical health, and it improves your sense of efficacy and well-being. And we have found this research through fMRI and through several research studies. And we discovered that dopamine provides reward for completing a task. Serotonin is a mood stabilizer for meditation and being connected to nature. Endorphin is a painkiller when you exercise or when you eat hot food. Oxytocin is when you hold hands, hug one another, happiness hormones are produced. And so we have to understand the software in which religion, philosophy had dominated in the past. In the Middle Ages, it was an age of superstition, where God was considered the absolute in terms of controlling. And during this time, Thomas Aquinas adopted Greek philosophy from Persian Muslim scholar Avicenna. And one of the things that he adopted is Aristotle's view of the universe, where Earth is at the center. And it seemed logical, and so the church adopted that paradigm. However, Copernicus presented an alternative paradigm where sun is at the center, Earth revolves around the sun, and moon revolves around the earth, which is unacceptable to the church. And they had a council to discuss the new discovery. But the greatest outrage are the French, who built the Notre Dame 300 years before they were actually able to build the Vatican. But the problem is they did not have any money to build the Vatican. So they argued that you can go to heaven by giving indulgences. And Martin Luther, as you know, said nothing in the Bible states that you can go to heaven by giving donation. But the radical development is he was able to translate the Bible into German and printed the books, and it became a world bestseller. And so people can read for themselves what is in the Bible, what is the truth, and what is the nature of God. And so this is called the Age of Reason. So traditional medieval paintings put God or representative God, Jesus or Maria, in the center. But Renaissance, you have a commoner, Mona Lisa, in the center, and nature is behind. So the figure-ground relationship has shifted. And during this time, René Descartes was confused because he was a devout Christian. he discovered the XY coordinate and also the reflex arc that is not controlled by our consciousness. So he adopted the method of radical doubt, where he rejected evidence unless it's absolutely true. But there is one thing he could not reject, that he existed. And the question is, how do I know I exist? And he said, cogito ergo sum. Rationality is a gift from God so that humans can understand God. But the same rationality gave access to mathematical truth and scientific laws. And human beings had two qualities. Our body belongs to the natural law, follow natural law, but our soul can understand God, truth, and justice. So Cartesian duality create a dichotomy between black and white, what is right and wrong. However, if you go to East Asia, there's a fundamentally different assumption in terms of black and white. It's not a contrast, but a relationship. Shades of gray connects black and white. And this is the Chinese character we use in Korea, Japan, human between. It is not, I think, therefore I am between, therefore I am. Know thy between. To be between or not to be between, that is a question. Does it make sense? Well, it's difficult because in individual assumption, it is human being. Traditional, in Korea, we require rice planting and we emphasize harmony. And the most important aspect of human being is human-heartedness. If you see a child drowning and if you don't feel compassion, you're not a human being. So grandmothers pray for the success of their children and in a Buddhist temple, and Christian mother will pray for the national entrance exam in front of the gate, and shamanistic mother will have a pig to pray. And in terms of filial piety, do you own your body? In Confucianism, no, you don't. Where did you get it from? You got it from your parents, so you have to succeed. And every Lunar New Year, we go to our hometown, pay respect for our ancestor, and we bow to our grandparents, and children bow to our grandparents. What does it mean in a relational culture? Our parents represent our past. Our children represent our future. So Korean parents invest in our children because they're selfish, because they can be happy only if their children are successful and happy. So North and South Korea is the most dangerous border in the world. And this is a difference between North Korea and South Korea in terms of academic development. But there is also this difference in terms of economic growth and the birth rate. Korea now has the lowest birth rate in the world. And this is the City Hall in 1953, where it was completely destroyed. And this is the picture of Seoul. So what happened? And the last question is, can money buy happiness and success? And a lot of people work very hard and focus on startups and business to make money. So if you have money, will you be happy? So Daniel Kahneman won the Nobel Prize in economics in 2002. He helped to launch the UN Happiness Survey and OECD Better Life Survey. And he found that income increases happiness both within across nations, but over time, the curve peaks and flattens. Once the economy develops and reaches a certain point, an individual median income predicts satisfaction with life, but it no longer predicts happiness, confirming Isline paradox. And this is what Isline discovered. Economic development does not increase happiness after a certain level. And this is what he has found in terms of emotions and satisfaction. So what he concludes, surveying over 400,000 Americans and 1,000 Americans who would record the daily experience of emotion, is that emotional well-being and life evaluations have different factors associated with them. Income and education associated with life satisfaction, but health, caregiving, loneliness were predicted by emotions of happiness. As income rose, life evaluation, satisfaction, happiness increased. However, happiness stopped increasing at the median income around $75,000. Life satisfaction is predicted by income and success. Happiness is predicted by experiencing the moment and sharing our lives with close relationships. However, what we remember is the overall evaluation in our life through our achievement, success, but we do not remember the 6,000 moments that made us happy. So he said that incomes is predicted more satisfaction, but not happy. People who have high income tend to be more stressed, and they do not spend more time in enjoyable activities. So he defined happiness is what I experience here and now. But in reality, humans pursue life satisfaction, which is connected to social yardstick, achieving goals, making money, and meeting expectation. He argues for the important distinction between experiencing self and remembering self. What one experiences in the moment may not actually be recorded later in the day due to the nature of the mind, and which is always reinterpreting the data. He labeled this phenomena as focusing illusion. And the second major study is a Harvard longitudinal study of adult development. It's an 85-year longitudinal study. And they've been able to examine people over 85 years ago. So they tracked 268 Harvard men and 450 Boston low income. And they did all sorts of analysis, DNA, MRA, and health records, personality, and IQ. And Waldinger, who is the current director, the surprising finding is our relationship and how happy we are in our relationship has a powerful influence on our health. And people who are the most satisfied in the relationship were the healthiest at the age of 80. Those who are healthy, live long, and happy are satisfied with their relationship, friends, and community, not money, not success, and not accomplishment. So this is a major challenge to psychological theory and what people believe. The opposite was true for excessive smoking, drinking, and loneliness. Loneliness kills. People die 10 years earlier. They're stressed, they're depressed, and their health conditions are terrible. So those children who had warm relationship, not intelligent, predict their success and their income. And no difference was found in terms of IQ, in terms of maximum income. And also they had caring mothers when they were young, and poor child relationship led to dementia. And also this is the case of those people who are effective at work. They had good relationship with their mothers. And with the fathers, if they had a warm relationship, they had lower rates of adult anxiety, greater enjoyment, increased satisfaction. And when study began, no one cared about empathy, attachment. But the key to healthy aging is relationship, relationship, relationship. So Waldinger concludes, the happiest people who stayed healthy as they grew old, who lived the longest, were the people who had the warmest connection with other people. So the case for American individualism and pursuit of happiness has to be revised. So how do you spend your day? And how do you live your life? And these are some of the pictures of what makes people happy. Do you engage in experiences in close relationship? So what is the secret of happiness? Caring and sharing. And I do research in Indonesia. Even though they're poor, they're happy. Go to Bhutan to meet the priest. They don't have the luxuries in life, but it is a sharing and caring that is the key to happiness. It is a relationship that is the most important, the emotional life that makes us happy. Money, success can bring satisfaction in life. Yes, I have accomplished many things in life, but what makes us happy are the experiences that we have in close relationship. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. Are there any questions? Yes, Michael.
Hi, yes, yeah, really interesting talk. I guess my question is about this analogy of software to human cognition, the relationship. Do you take, how seriously do you take that analogy, I guess is my question. So, you know, obviously software runs, you know, when we talk about regular software, we're talking about algorithms that run on, you know, a standard kind of, you know, particular kind of computer, right, that is going to calculate, it's going to run through calculations of a very specific kind. The brain doesn't work like that. You can't just kind of upload new instructions into the brain and then the brain calculates the new instructions. This is kind of not how brains work. The closer analogy, if we want to use computer analogies, is to an artificial neural network that can perform all kinds of tasks. It could be robotic tasks, or it could be language modeling tasks. And, I don't know that we think of like the weights that make up the ChatGPT, artificial neural network, the deep neural network, those as being like quote unquote software. And they're not like instructions that ChatGPT is running. They're a set of weights in a very complex model that then generates this emergent behavior. So, and that's probably more what's going on with the human brain is that we have, this very complex structure with lots of interacting parts of the biological level that then generates this kind of emergent behavior. It's not a kind of a quote unquote simple computer that's processing instructions the way that most software, like the computer that I'm using right now, it does. So in any case, I'm just curious about what leverage we're getting out of this analogy. Are you concerned that that it's confusing, or that there's some disanalogies there? And just generally your thoughts on this idea of quote unquote software that's running on the human brain.
Thank you very much for your question. It's an analogy because most of the paradigms in psychology believe that biology influences our mind, or the cognitive process, the mechanical process were examined. So it is an analogy, and we need to understand the concept of agency, that we are able to set goals, develop skills and belief system to achieve our goals. But the most important aspect of what we call self-efficacy is the social support that we receive from other people. So it is an analogy to make people think that the software is not visible and everybody operates differently. And so now we need to begin to understand the mind, the self, and culture from a different perspective, away from a deterministic view, the Newtonian physical model, to the more quantum probabilistic model. And each individual, based on their experience, have their neural network that are connected very differently. And that's why we believe in uniqueness of who we are. But the more important is that we are connected with one another in terms of information, emotion that is shared. So it is an analogy. I use it just to make people think. But the problem is there is no other analogy that I can think of. So if you can suggest a better analogy that could approximate, because we do not know very much about the brain and how it works. We're just discovering through fMRI of its potential. And Gerhard Husserl suggests it's a social construction. And so even the computer are created by human being, and they mimic some parts of what we do. But the difference is computers have a large storage capacity, and they can process large amount of informations that humans beings cannot. So human beings develop heuristics called stories to remember, because we cannot remember in our short-term memory more than 8 digits. So we tell story and we create stories. And so this is kind of an analogy to the software, because software development is essentially storytelling in terms of what you want the hardware to do.
Yeah, I would just say, if you just asked if I had a better one, I think you're just talking about culture. I don't think we need an analogy to software. Personally, it seems a little misleading or just confusing, because software is an algorithm that's very specific, and you're just talking about like a huge number of things that are kind of all over the landscape, from narratives to habits to institutions and so on. So I think we have words for that kind of thing, those kinds of things. I'm not sure that the analogy is getting you a lot of leverage, but take what I'm saying with absolutely a grain of salt, and you can disregard it altogether as well. That's just kind of my quick take.
Thank you. It's an interesting point. Thank you.
Wonderful. I'm sorry, but that's all the time we have for this talk. If anyone is interested on asking more questions or discussing further, I would encourage you to contact us and we will put you in touch with Professor Kim. Thank you so much, Professor Kim, for joining us again.